O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts and the living of our lives be acceptable in your sight, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Wow, 2022. Whew, what kind of year is it going to be? I got questions. A good one. Okay, we got answers. All right, good. I got questions. What kind of year is it going to be? Yes, I'm like so sad. Of course, what's interesting is the internet blew up more about Betty White than Desmond Tutu, but at any rate. But yeah, let's start with Betty. Yeah, oh my goodness, I was so ready to have a 100th birthday party with her. She didn't know I was coming, but you know, I was going to be there. Absolutely. But let's talk about Betty for a minute. Talk about questions. Talk about, my goodness, when television was a media that everybody watched, because like there was nothing else to watch, she was in groundbreaking programs that asked questions and made us wonder, what is it like with Mary Tyler Moore to be a divorcee working woman in the world? How do you live and how does that work? With all of her senior friends and Golden Girls, which will live forever, they're all now eating cheesecake and have heaven, somebody once said. Asked us all kinds of questions about who do we love and how do we love, and took up issues of femininity and sexuality, homosexuality and ageism and getting old, and asking all those questions about what happens when we get old and how do we live graciously and faithfully and how do we embrace one another in love. She taught us a lot. I must admit, I didn't follow Hot in Cleveland too much, but anyway. It was a good show. And the Desmond Tutu, his book on joy, which is co-written with him and the Dalai Lama, is an amazing book. They would celebrate each other's birthdays together. And Desmond Tutu taught the world that enemies can be reconciled, that it's hard work, but that systems that destroy and degrade human beings can be taken apart and reimagined. Quote was shared that if he gets to heaven and finds out God hates homosexuals, he's going to go to the other place. Desmond Tutu taught us to love strangers and enemies. So I wonder, without these two, what's 2022 going to be like? Politically, we've got a lot to do in the United States of America. We have elections coming up, oh my. Environmentally, hurricanes, fires, and blizzards all at the same time in Boulder, Colorado. Wow. I know the weather there can be crazy. I had in-laws that lived there for years. 2022, I got questions. What's it going to be like? Omicron? How many more Greek letters do we need to learn? I got questions. How do we face? Usually at the beginning of a new year, people are asking about resolutions, right? Promises you make to yourself and the world about how you're going to live differently and get everything in order, and everybody's going to quit smoking and stop the overeating. But I got questions. How do we make it through 2022 in a way in which we will thrive, in which we will live, in which we will find ourselves in a better place as the year goes on? And it wasn't our plan to have communion today. Our plan was to have communion on the 19th of December. But maybe it's good we're having communion today, because communion tells us that we are not alone. Communion, by its name, its English name, is to be together, to connect to one another, to be gathered around that common table, to share bread and drink with one another and pass the peace to one another. So I guess one of my answers to the I've got questions is I'm going to face 2022 not alone, but with others and with a community. And this certainly is part of my very important community. You are a part of how I will face 2022 and thrive and grow and navigate the challenges that I'm unaware of at the moment. And we'll celebrate the blessings that I don't know yet what they're going to be. And I've got questions. Now, what day of Christmas is this?
The second Sunday.
Right, so we must have 9, up to 9 days. Somebody counting it right? If Christmas is the 1st, the 26th, okay? And we get all the way to 1 week. And then, so, there are 12 days of Christmas. It's not just a song about giving extravagant gifts to your beloved. Do you know what that song was about? Anybody know where that came from? It's a secret message. It was a secret message by actually the Catholic faithful in England when they were outlawed about teaching their children the tools of the faith. So in secret message language, who would the partridge in the pear tree be? Jesus on the cross. What's day 2? 2 turtle doves. Where do we find the message of God's grace in the world? But in the Old and the New Testaments. The 2 turtle doves. The dove of peace with Noah and the dove of baptism with Jesus. And it goes on, and I can't do all of it, but the 9 gifts of the Spirit. But we have questions. Last week, we had an infant in a manger, cattle feeding trough, cradle. And now we got a 12-year-old kid. Whoa. And what we missed last Sunday was we had an 8-day-old child who got circumcised in the temple and was met in Luke's gospel alone by Simeon and Anna, who prophesied that this kid was amazing in the same way that Elizabeth and Mary also prophesied. So I'm inviting you to go on a journey this year, not alone, with one another and certainly with the Gospel of Luke, because we get some really cool things in the Gospel of Luke that we don't see anywhere else. Some of our favorite stories. Where would we be without Mary's Magnificat? But we need Luke to tell us about that. Where would we be without the blessing that is said about the Virgin Mary if Elizabeth hadn't come to us in the Gospel of Luke? But there's a bunch more. What are some of your favorite stories about Jesus? Any known stories about Jesus? Today's story in the temple, yeah, where he's like arguing with the leaders, and that's his bar mitzvah, you understand, right? He's 12. Anybody been to a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah? Wow, it's amazing. Give or take, the moon comes up, this sets now, it might be today, it might be tomorrow that sunset happens, I don't know, but we're close. You're right. But it's the coming of manhood, it's coming of puberty. And here is Jesus. But if you've been to a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, what does the candidate do?
I think they ask questions.
Yeah, it's not just saying vows like we do. It's real simple. Yes, I do. No. The leaders of the congregation interrogate the daughter or son of the law. I've only been to one, and it was a bat mitzvah. This amazing girl. She was raised both Christian and Jewish, and so learned Hebrew, because you don't go into that just hanging on the English. She learned Hebrew. She gave the sermon that day, just like Jesus does in another passage. And then she had to defend herself, and elders in the congregation questioned her sermon. And she had to defend why she believed that was true. So this is a passage that reflects Jewish tradition. And we get it in Luke. We don't get it anywhere else. Any other stories about Jesus that you remember? What about the lost sheep? We like that one, right? you got to have the Gospel of Luke, otherwise you don't get the story of the lost sheep. And talking about women, you know the story about the woman that loses the coin and that looks all over the house trying to find the thing and finally does? That's the Gospel of Luke. The prodigal son, the runaway son, the extravagant father. You have to have the Gospel of Luke for that. The Pharisee and the tax collector, Zacchaeus up in that tree and coming down. You have to have the Gospel of Luke for that. The miraculous catch of feet. The woman that washes Jesus' feet and dries it with her hair and is given forgiveness. We have to have the Gospel of Luke for that. The Gospel of Luke, however, is the longest gospel, 19,000 words. But do you know what else is about 19,000 words? A little less. Alice in Wonderland. So if you can read Alice in Wonderland in a sit, you can read the Gospel of Luke in a sit. And I guess that's my challenge. I'm really inviting all of you to get into the life of Jesus and go into 2022 with God at your side. Read the Gospel of Luke. Find out who this amazing person. Last year we began reading the Gospel of Mark, and Jesus was on it, doing it. He was the man of action. But now we find out that Jesus pays attention to the poor, to the women, to the marginalized, to the lepers. And in fact, Luke, very much not one of the disciples. Luke, do you know what his nickname was? Yes, Paul called him the great physician. And Luke uses medical terminology when describing the illnesses, just like Hippocrates does. The man with dropsy, the woman with the issue of blood. They're all very exact medical terminology of the day. Luke describes Jesus' work as healer in such powerful, palpable ways. And that early Christian community trying to figure out how to live their lives. And, oh, who was my first reader on Christmas Eve? Was that you? That was you. So sorry. There was Quirinius was the governor of Syria, and we had all those political names. But Luke is setting it up that there's the emperor, there's the regional potentate, there's the governor, there's the leader of the religious court, all these great people and places of power and position. And then there's an unmarried, pregnant woman whose baby gets born in a barn. And Luke is saying, where's the real power? How do we deal with powers and authorities that abuse their position? And the early Christian community, now 70 AD, it's been a couple of decades since the life of Jesus. The temple in Jerusalem is destroyed by the empire. People are scattered and scared. And Luke says, I need to write all this down, lest we forget. And in fact, most of the people that Luke is writing to are not Jews, but Gentiles that don't know all of that rich tradition. So Luke traces Jesus beginning not to Moses or to Abraham and Sarah, but all the way to Adam and Eve, saying Jesus is one of all humanity. So I don't know, as you walk into 2022, I invite you not to go alone. I invite you to come with all your questions. I invite you to come to get to know the Jesus of Luke's gospel, who reaches out to the women and the marginalized, who has a word for those who have great power and authority, and that is the word of sharing it, of making a difference in the world with the influence that you have. The Gospel of Luke ends with the story of the two thieves. Mark doesn't tell us about them. But even at the end, the one that turns and asks for forgiveness that message of hope, even at the very end, comes to us from the Gospel of Luke. Sisters and brothers, siblings in Christ, and partners in faith, let's journey together and encourage one another to remember what God is doing in our world, so that as we face the headlines that are yet to come at us, we will not do it alone, but we'll do it walking with Jesus. Jesus, who is the healer, Jesus, who is the companion, Jesus, who is the hope, who lifts up the brokenhearted, who, just like Mary said, lifts up the brokenhearted, binds them, heals them, scatters the proud, and transforms the world. When we are looking for hope, let's remind one another that we journey together and with Christ and with God. Because there's going to be plenty of other voices in the next 12 months that will scream at us. But friends, we need to keep loud and clear the message that God is with us, transforming our lives and empowering us, sending us out with purpose and with hope. Luke didn't want the early Christians at the end of that first century to forget. So he wrote down in an orderly fashion to prove a point. And that gift is for you and for me. Let's go on a journey together. Let's celebrate and remind each other of who this Jesus really is. Happy New Year, 2022.